Hey, good morning. Today is Saturday, January 25th, 2025, and this is Wes Fryer. I think this may be the earliest I've ever recorded a podcast because it is, I think it's like 5:54. It's basically 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and I want to talk I think I want to talk about multidimensional identity. So I am sitting out on our sun porch. Of course, it is not quite 6 o'clock. It is dark. It is still winter time here on the Piedmont of North Carolina. Oh, but I absolutely love this time of day. I think it's my favorite time of day because my wonderful spouse I call it nesting. She is such a great nesting person, creating this warm and wonderful nest for us with different kinds of decorations and things. And so, even though our Christmas decorations are picked up, Shelley likes to keep the winter decorations out and also candles. And so, I have the backyard lights on, which I magically control with my voice using our Google Assistant. But I've got these different candles. One of them is a real candle, but there's probably like six different battery operated. I think they're LED candles. And the little heater that we've got back here is going. It's like 25 degrees outside. And I just I love the opportunity to have a Saturday like this where the day is so open and it's not scheduled. I've got some different things on my mind, but I can be intentional about the containers that I would like to create for myself to get some different projects done, to get some things done around the house and personally, probably some things from school, but a lot of things. But I want to talk about multidimensional personality. And man, it is so important for us to have time to reflect. It is very, very overwhelming today to turn on the news. And I think this is probably true irrespective of where you fall in the political spectrum, because there are not only so many things going on, because there's always current events, but there are a lot of very dramatic events going on as well. The fires that continue to rage in Southern California and bring destruction to many, many people. I mean, I can think of a few things that are more dramatic than seeing these images of massive wildfires and homes destroyed and, people displaced and people killed. And the scenes of the burned out, neighborhoods and communities are so apocalyptic that, I do have a friend, Elaine Wren, whose school in the Palisades was almost completely destroyed. It was basically burned up. I think there were some buildings that partially survived. But, we have relatives there, we have friends there. And that's just one natural disaster, that's happening. We've got very, very dramatic weather events. We just had, I think, an unprecedented winter storm that hit the Gulf Coast of the United States that dumped over 9 inches of snow on New Orleans, that brought snow to the panhandle of Florida. And we're talking like 9 inches, areas of Georgia, places that just never get snow. We got our first, what are we called? Our first, basically snowfalls. And I'm trying to say it's measurable snowfall. Here on the Piedmont of North Carolina, we live in Charlotte, North Carolina. We live in the southeast part of the metro area in a little community called Stallings, near Matthews, where our mail is delivered. And, we barely got less than an inch. I mean, we probably got a half inch, but we did have a snow day. And so anyway, it's a very it's a disturbing thing whenever you have traumatic events happening in your life, even when you visually witness them and experience them, like seeing them on television, seeing them now on your smartphone in the feeds that we have with social media. These things actually do have an impact and an effect on us. And identity is so interesting, right? I am not a sociologist. I am not an anthropologist. I am an educator. I am a teacher. I am currently a middle school classroom teacher, which honestly is a very lovely thing to do at age 54, having been in education in various roles for the past 30 years. And I, or I guess, well, yeah, basically 30 years. I did my student teaching in 1995 and became a fourth grade classroom teacher in the fall of, I guess was it the fall of 95 or the fall of 96? Maybe 95, 96. So this may be my 30-year anniversary this year in 2025 of being an educator, because I'd left the Air Force, had to figure out what I was going to do with my life, and decided, hey, I think I want to be a teacher. And I'm glad I did. That is an important part of my identity. And when I say multidimensional identity, one of the things that sparks this, and I think I'm going to put this in at the end of this little audio podcast. I'm publishing this on a channel that I haven't utilized in a while called Class with Dr. Fryer. I started with Anchor. Anchor, it was bought by Spotify, and now it's called, I think, Spotify. It was Spotify for Creators. I think the app is called Creators now. Basically, the company Spotify used to have a great app that allowed you to edit podcasts. Now you can just publish your podcast. So I'm gonna try to combine the audio from an AI program that I created this last week using Notebook LM. Notebook LM is a platform that Google Labs has developed with one of my favorite authors in the world, Stephen Johnson. Just love Stephen Johnson. His book and PBS series, Where Do Good Ideas Come From, is absolutely phenomenal. And it's really informed my thinking over the years. You can go to one of my favorite presentations that I've been doing for probably over a decade now, called Finding Good Ideas or Finding Useful Ideas. I have a shortened link that goes to it at wfryer.me/ideas. That'll forward you to the Google site page on my handouts wiki, which is wiki.westfryer.com. And you can find that. But I just love this idea that, where do good ideas come from? Well, they come from a lot of different places. And when you get to hang out with people who have innovative ideas, different ideas, there's cross-pollination that happens. It can be serendipitous. This is one of the things that's lovely about subscribing to a variety of podcast feeds from folks and organizations that you are interested in, because you can open up that podcast feed and you never know what you're going to find. And it is, it's like so much better than just turning on the television, because it's more of a curated feed of content that you have personally selected and, curated with intention. It can be. And you can really, discover some great stuff. Well, anyway, Stephen Johnson helped develop Notebook LM. I have a weekly podcast with Jason Neiffer. Jason is the now director of the Montana Digital Academy. I've known Jason for years. I think our episode this last week was 345. Jason encourages me to explore and utilize a variety of different tools, and many of those these days involve artificial intelligence. That podcast that we publish now on YouTube, and it's a little slower for me to post produce it, but it edtechsr.com. You can go to that website. Anyway, Jason is the one that discovered Notebook LM, and I have used it from time to time. Well, he had done some really funny experiments with it where he had put, I think, the manual to a a humidifier that he had set up for his parents, and it created this podcast about it because it has this tool. You make a library of documents. It could be one document, it could be multiple documents, and it creates what it calls a deep dive podcast. I think he did one also on a PDF of a web page that required a login. It was just a Google login. That was it. And just to kind of see what it would do. And I think it created this 5-minute, somewhat engaging, as I sip my coffee, somewhat engaging podcast about the Google login window. Okay, so after that, this was on Wednesday, Jason has updated his website. We encourage each other to do things. And so I learned about 5 years ago when I went to Cairo, Egypt, and had a chance to speak at a conference from the keynote speaker that, hey, it's great to have a landing page to give people, at a conference, at a presentation, in a video, rather than just saying, hey, find me on Twitter. I stopped using Twitter for a while. There's other platforms, make an after page. And so I created an after page on my wesfryer.com site. Well, and then I can say, hey, go to this page. I just now say, go to wesfryer.com, and you can find a lot of links about me. Well, Jason has created a website called AI Centrist, because he has some, centrist views. They're not extremist views. They're centrist views about AI. Well, he has, fleshed out quite a bit about himself with different kinds of links. And after our podcast this week, I said, I think I want to throw that into Notebook LM. There's a lot of text and content on Jason's site. Of course, I could read the whole thing, but I kind of scanned it. But I thought, hey, I would like to have an audio summary of it. So without any kind of special prompt, I just, I uploaded a PDF of his aicentrist.com, which is a single web page he created with Canva.com, which is a platform for graphic design, but you can also create videos, you can create websites, a variety of different things. And I'm actually going to, inspired in part by Jason, I'm going to teach my web design middle school students this year how to make a web page with Canva, because he's created a single page that has what are called anchor links at the top that kind of zip down to different parts of the page. Well, anyway, I threw it in there, created it, and it was pretty good. It was about 8 minutes long, and it really was, it was a deep dive into Jason and I for using this webpage that he had created and curated. And so anyway, I had the thought, I wonder what that would look like if I put all of my sort of biographical and like job application materials together. I've just kind of gotten into the habit of keeping my own resume, academic vita, because I think I've not really been smart in the past with my vita. I have a web page that literally has every presentation. These include keynote speeches, but just workshops, online webinars, breakout sessions at conferences. I've shared kind of a ridiculous number of conference presentations over the past, I guess since 2010. So that's like 15 years, right? Over the last 15 years. And they're all on this one web page. And then on my Vita, I've got every presentation I've ever done going back to like 1997. So almost, I started, sharing stuff pretty quick in my educational career. It's overwhelming. And if you apply for an academic position like a professor position, it's interesting, right? Committees who look at those kinds of assistant professor applications, they don't really care that much about a workshop or a presentation you gave at a little conference or for your school. They care more about refereed publications, journal articles, and then conference presentations at academic conferences. And so anyway, in the last year, I have curated and remade my Vita to try and make it more normal, I guess, more normal looking for a higher ed university committee. So anyway, I took my new Vita, my shortened one, my old long Vita, my bio that I have on my website, my resume, and my, page of all my presentations. And basically just, made a new Google LM project, threw all of them in there, and said, with a specific prompt, create a summary introducing Wes Fryer, and do this for a diverse audience, because the audience might include, future employers, but it could include, parents of students that Wes teaches, people who have seen a TEDx talk that I gave, found me online. Like, this is the thing with the internet and social media and web pages, is we experience something called context collapse. Because if you come to my school and visit me in my classroom where I'm teaching, like, there's a very specific context, there's expectations of things you would expect me to say, and like, that's a very defined context. If you would come with my wife and I to church on Sunday, to Uptown Charlotte, to our wonderful, wonderful church and church community, Caldwell Presbyterian Church, and you'd come maybe to our adult Sunday school class, it's a specific context where there are more expectations about things that are shared and discussed. Well, what came out of this Google LM experiment, and I iterated this twice. The first one that I did, Google, it created about an 8-minute podcast, and Google was a bit confused because of my earlier work when I was in the Air Force. I had a Fulbright scholarship out of the Air Force Academy. I went to Mexico City. I wrote a series of 4 papers on Latin American security issues. What did I write? I wrote, drug war, a whole paper about the drug war, and it was like trying to forecast a new, less supply side approach and more demand side focus for the drug war, but a lot about the history of the drug war in the mainly Western Hemisphere, but in the world. I wrote about collective security. I wrote about Mexican security and the relationship the United States has had to Mexico. Let's see, one was about prospects for collective security, and then what was the third one about? It's been a while. It's been a while since I wrote those in 1993, 92 and 93. So anyway, Google was a little confused, like, whoa, what is this? Here's a, Air Force Academy graduate and Fulbright scholar who's, now a teacher and an educator. Because I had a major shift in my career. So anyway, I decided to iterate, give it a little bit of a different prompt, explain that I had, left the Air Force and decided to become an educator and a teacher. Anyway, both podcasts, and like I said, I'm gonna include the audio of the second podcast, about 12 minutes long. I'm gonna append it, and I haven't really done this. I'm gonna use my Voice Record Pro app to edit it. So I'm not gonna even do this on my laptop at all. I'm just gonna produce this on my phone. I'm recording this with Voice Record Pro, but you can do some combining and minor editing, I guess, within the app. The Notebook LM AI, when it looked at me and tried to introduce me and make sense of my identity, really made a big deal out of my barbecue and my Cook with Wes, series of videos and channels. And so one of my thoughts about multidimensional identity is I definitely believe that all of us are multidimensional, meaning, like, I'll talk about myself, I guess. I mean, I am not just defined as I am a classroom teacher. I teach media literacy, I teach STEM, I teach students, hopefully, how to become better critical thinkers, how to, use the SIFT web literacy framework and, stop, investigate the source, find trusted coverage, trace to the original, like teaching kids how to navigate the very polluted and fractured and polarized information landscape. As a middle school teacher, that's an important part of what I do, and to a degree, the things that we do define our identity. But, and my wife and I are much more, I think, aware of this, being empty nesters as we are, because all of our kids are adults. They're all 21 and older. We still have one in college. Two of them are out of college. As they moved out of the house and we ended up being just, here with our dogs, that's a big deal when you shift into the empty nest. And so actually, when that happened in January, was that in January of 2023, I guess? How long have we been doing it? Shelly and I just recorded our 32nd episode of a podcast we call Wes and Shelly Share. You can probably go to whatever your favorite podcast app is and type in Wes and Shelly Share and find it. Our last episode was about alcohol and adventures. We've kind of gotten into a mode of reflecting on the past, but also talking about the present and the future. And many of our conversations there do touch on this idea of identity. And it is not really great to fully define yourself, for me to fully define myself by what I do, because what I do can and will change. And so, we're not in retirement yet. I think Shelly would love to be retired at this point. I love the work that I'm doing and really feel called to do a number of other things in my life. I wouldn't want to just snap my fingers and say, hey, I think I'm going to retire. And financially, we're not, unfortunately, in a great place where we even could do that today. But you just become more aware of these identity issues when you have an identity shift. When I, left the Air Force in 1994, that was really hard for me. And I could basically talk for about, a month about that. Because I had literally worn this uniform for 6 years. I had been working most of my life, probably since I was, probably since I was in third grade, to want to be in the Air Force. I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to be a pilot. Honestly, I wanted to be like Luke Skywalker. I wanted to, help make the galaxy a peaceful and safe and good place as a pilot and a military officer. And so when circumstances changed such that I couldn't do that anymore, I literally had to take off a uniform and I had to leave an entire community and, my tribe, and then figure out, whoa, okay, well, I can't do that anymore. Whoa, what the heck am I going to do? And well, who am I really? Because I thought I was this military officer and now I'm not, who the heck am I? And man, I tell you, that has been a long, long process. And honestly, I feel now at this stage of my life in my mid 50s, I feel better about all of those things than I ever have been. I feel like more of an integrated person, but I'm still this multidimensional person. So anyway, it was very, very interesting to listen, and I'm going to play this for you. And hey, if you've got feedback, share it with me. Let me know. I think that you can share a comment if you're on Spotify to this episode of Class with Dr. Fryer. I think you can do that directly. You can also find ways to connect with me by going to wesfryer.com/after. Blue Sky is now my favorite social media platform. But I'm going to share this on Facebook and some other places. And so hopefully, this is part of our fractured world. You can find one of those places. There's a little form actually you can fill out on wesfryer.com/contact. And I do, usually on a weekly basis, take a look at new things that have come in there, and some of them are spam, but that's how I actually get messages sometimes from somebody who says, hey, I'm using your oral history lessons, or hey, I'm, thank you for this resource or link or whatever that you shared. So hearing an AI, a very powerful artificial intelligence tool, a generative AI platform, in this case, Notebook LM, parse and process and analyze these different, I think there were probably 7 or 8 PDF documents, some of which are over 100 pages, and say, hey, I want you to take this material and then figure out who Wes Fryer is and then tell us. It was really really interesting. And like I said, it also made a much bigger deal about my barbecue, but it made some connections about how I love community. I love learning. I am absolutely a lifetime learner. I love sharing. I mean, good grief. Here it is, not 7 a.m. on a Saturday, and I'm recording this audio podcast to share and put out. But, podcasting has been for me since I started in 2005. It's been a wonderful way to reflect on things, to be able to deepen my own learning, to make connections to people. And I personally think we need to be paying a lot more attention to influencer culture and the dynamics of influencers, because so many of us in our society today continue to get our information and our news not through just mainstream sources, but through social media sources and through influencers, and I am a creator, and I think I mean, to some degree, I am an influencer, and I have been since I've been blogging since 2003, baby. That's a long time. And so anyway, yeah, multidimensional personality. And so I'm going to go ahead and append to this podcast the 12-minute audio deep dive that Google LM created for me this past week, actually on Wednesday night. And yeah, it gives me an opportunity. It reflects back to me through things like my Vita and, resume and bio and all these different kinds of things, stuff that I've done. But what is probably most amazing is the analysis that the AI does and the connections that it makes. It synthesizes ideas and it draws conclusions that I fed it material, right? I have written with by myself, I think without the help of AI at all, my own, bio or biography. Because I've, as a person who's gone to conferences and been a keynote speaker and presented, these are the things that you give people to say, here, do a short little introduction about me. But then I also have these things online. And so anyway, it's just very interesting. I want to encourage you, as this podcast by Google LM will do, to be multidimensional, to share your multidimensional self. I think there is tremendous value in sharing our journeys of learning. We are living in a very tumultuous and challenging day for a lot of reasons. The news cycle itself and the news feeds that we listen to, watch, hear, and it can be distressing. But I totally think, and I think I'm gonna record a separate Wisdom with Wes little video episode. I started that series last year, primarily on YouTube. I'm going to do one on being the content filter, because each of us, we do filter the world, but then we can also share out of our filters. Hey, this was a great video. This was a great podcast. Hey, this is an awesome idea. This is a great recipe. Oh my gosh, have you tried, using Bakken's barbecue sauce on a pork butt? That was my last video I made. And there's a lot of value in that. And there can be joy and serendipity and, learning and growth. And I reflected on this with my late mother, Angie Fryer. She loved to read food bloggers, and she loved to learn about recipes from cooks and chefs all over the world. And I sometimes thought, with my dad, being the main beneficiary, or you could also say sort of guinea pig, of my mom's cooking. She's a wonderful gourmet cook. How amazing that was, that, they're cooking this, Israeli dish that mom learned about online, or they're, cooking some Indian dish, or the salad is influenced by this, Mediterranean Lebanese, cook who has shared a recipe. Just the transformative ways that new ideas, that good ideas from interesting people, from talented people, and from diverse people can influence our lives. So maybe you're going to want to make your own deep dive on Google LM about something. Yes, you could take a dehumidifier, or humidifier manual, but you could also take a cookbook. You could take your own resume, your Vita, or that of someone else. And it's just very, very interesting to have those things reflected back to us. And then in this case, to have them reflected back by a very, very sophisticated artificial intelligence algorithm. So without further ado, here is the Notebook LM deep dive reflection that I created this past week, something like probably on the 22nd or 23rd of January 2025, with, some of my bio and Vita and resume materials. Until next time, this has been Wes Fryer. I encourage you to follow me on social media, and you can go to wesfryer.com, specifically wesfryer.com/after, and get a bunch of links there. Take care and have a fantastic day.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're going to be unraveling the world of Wesley Fryer. He's had a truly fascinating career in education and technology, but there's way more to his story.
Yeah, what I find most interesting about Wesley is how his journey goes through so many different fields. It's not every day you see a U.S. Air Force Academy graduate and a Fulbright scholar decide to go into elementary education.
Yeah, you're right. Not exactly the typical career path.
Yeah.
But that kind of seems to be a recurring theme with Wesley Fryer. I mean, this is a man with a PhD in curriculum and instruction, which, sounds pretty standard for an academic.
Right, until you dig a little deeper and you realize that his dissertation was on impact analysis of phone-casted lecture summaries. Not your typical research topic.
It's like he was podcasting before podcasting was even a thing. A true digital pioneer back in those early days of the internet.
And speaking of being ahead of the curve, you mentioned he was a Fulbright scholar.
Yeah, his Fulbright research was focused on Latin American security issues in Mexico City. Really shows you how diverse his interests are. He's not just sticking to one field. And when you look at his actual career path, it's clear that he's never been one to stay in a single lane. He's been an elementary teacher, a STEM teacher, an instructional coach, a university instructor, and even director of technology at KCD School in Oklahoma City.
That's really something. Experiencing education from so many different angles, I bet it gives him a really unique perspective.
One of the things that really struck me was his work on media literacy, especially his project Conspiracies and Culture Wars. It's all about helping students navigate the crazy world of information these days.
Super important skill, especially now. I mean, we're bombarded with information constantly.
Totally. And Wes doesn't just talk about these skills, he lives them. The man has been blogging since 2003, has a YouTube channel with over 1 million views, and has even written several books, including one called Mapping Media to the Common Core, which highlights 14 different media projects.
Wow. What I find really interesting is his concept of new civics, giving students the tools to really engage in our world today.
That's a good point. Schools need to be teaching this stuff.
Totally. But his interests go even beyond that. He's a big advocate for STEM education, too, putting coding and computational thinking right into his lessons.
Essential skills for the 21st century, for sure. And he believes coding projects can really help students become self-directed learners.
For sure. But there's another side to Wesley Fryer that might surprise you, something completely different.
This is where things get interesting. Remember how we were talking about him being a big content creator? Well, that creative energy goes beyond education.
Oh, what do you mean?
Wesley has another passion, something you wouldn't expect from someone so involved in education technology. He's really into barbecue.
Barbecue? Wow, that's not what I was expecting.
I know, right? It seems like a total 180 from his professional life. But the more you learn about Wes, you realize he's all about living a multifaceted life.
So tell me more. What's this barbecue enthusiast side of him like? Is he just grilling in his backyard or something?
Oh no, it's way more than just casual grilling. He's got this whole online persona built around his love of barbecue. TikTok videos of brisket, Instagram photos of perfectly smoked ribs, even Facebook groups dedicated to discussing grilling techniques.
Wow, it sounds like he's created a whole community around barbecue.
Exactly. He even has a blog, Cook with Wes, dedicated to everything barbecue. Recipes, instructions, even tips for troubleshooting common grilling problems.
There's that teacher instinct again, even in his barbecue.
It's amazing to see how these totally different interests of his actually connect. Whether he's teaching students about media literacy or sharing his love for barbecue, there's that thread of creativity, community, and empowerment running through it all.
It really makes you think about how your own interests connect to each other.
Wesley's a great example of not being confined to a single box. You could be an educator, a technologist, a barbecue enthusiast, all at the same time.
It's inspiring. Makes you wonder how he finds the time for everything, though.
That's what we'll be looking at next, how he balances it all and keeps that passion going.
It's really amazing to see how Wesley's passion for using technology in education really took off in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, it was like a whole new world was opening up, and he was right there embracing it.
Think about it. Building websites in the mid-90s, one of the first bloggers. He even produced educational videos way before YouTube even existed.
He was ahead of the curve for sure. Saw the potential of these tools right from the start.
And you can see that forward-thinking approach in his work with organizations like the Texas Education Network and his role as director of distance learning at Texas Tech University.
He wasn't afraid to push for change, to get technology into the classroom even when it wasn't popular.
And it wasn't just about using the latest gadget. It was always about how technology could make learning better.
Exactly. It's easy to get caught up in the hype sometimes, but you have to ask, how does this actually help students learn?
Right. It's all about choosing the right tool for the job.
And talking about helping students learn, I have to bring up his work on cyberbullying and digital citizenship. Such a crucial topic these days.
Absolutely. We need to make sure kids know how to navigate the online world safely and responsibly.
It's not just about using tech. It's about using it in a way that's ethical and safe.
Like giving them the tools to explore this new digital landscape safely.
And that ties right back into his work with media literacy that we discussed earlier.
Being able to think critically about information is more important than ever.
Especially now with social media and how quickly misinformation can spread.
His Conspiracies and Culture Wars project is such a great example of how to help students develop those skills.
It's about teaching them how to think for themselves, not what to think.
And to be able to have respectful conversations even when they disagree with someone.
And to realize that just because something's on the internet doesn't make it true.
We have to be skeptical and question our sources.
It's a skill that goes way beyond the classroom.
Definitely. And Wes has been a champion for that throughout his career.
But it's not just about absorbing information, it's about creating it too.
You're right. We talked about his content creation earlier, but it's worth taking a closer look.
What's fascinating is how he uses so many different ways to share his ideas.
It's not just blogs and YouTube videos. He's podcasting, presenting at conferences, writing books, even doing multimedia projects with his students.
He's a true multimedia storyteller.
Always looking for new ways to engage his audience and make learning more interactive.
And he's not afraid to experiment with new tech either.
Always pushing the boundaries, trying new things.
And he encourages his students to become creators too. Not just consumers of information.
Giving them a voice and a platform to share their own perspectives.
It's all about the power of storytelling.
Yeah, Wesley believes in the power of stories to connect with people, to teach, to inspire.
His work with the Story Chasers Project really shows that.
Using technology to capture and preserve stories that might be lost otherwise. Sharing them with the world.
Such a great example of how tech can be used to bring people together and celebrate different experiences.
A reminder that everyone has a story worth sharing.
So we've talked about Wesley's work in education, his passion for tech, his ideas about digital citizenship, and his belief in storytelling.
But there's another part of his life that we haven't touched on yet. His faith.
Yeah, it's a big part of who he is, and it definitely comes through in his work and writing.
His podcast, Stories of Faith, is a great example of that. It shows how much he believes in sharing spiritual journeys and finding those deeper connections.
It reminds us that education is more than just academics.
It's about helping someone grow as a whole person, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually.
Helping them find their place in the world.
And Wesley has really done that throughout his career.
He's definitely an inspiration. But before we move on, I want to go back to something you mentioned before. His varied career path.
Yeah, it's remarkable how he's been able to move so seamlessly between being an elementary teacher, a STEM teacher, a university instructor, a director of technology, and a digital learning consultant.
It's like he's taken all these different experiences and woven them together.
Yeah, it's given him such a wide range of knowledge and expertise.
His ability to adapt and take on new challenges is something else.
He's a true lifelong learner, always seeking out new things.
That's a great lesson for all of us in today's world.
We need to be adaptable, curious, and ready to learn new things all the time.
And to be open to the journey, even when it takes you in unexpected directions.
So what does all this mean for our listeners?
It means you don't have to limit yourself to just one path or one passion.
You can be multifaceted, just like Wesley. Explore your interests and find those connections.
And that brings us back to his love for barbecue. It might seem like a completely separate thing, but it actually reflects a lot of who he is.
In our next segment, we're going to dive into that culinary side of Wesley. We'll explore how his love of barbecue connects to his values, his way of learning, and his desire to build community.
It's a great reminder that our passions can really influence each other in surprising ways.
So stay tuned as we fire up the grill and discover the delicious connection between barbecue and the world of Wesley Fryer.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been exploring the many sides of Wesley Fryer. We've talked about his work in education, his passion for technology, and his thoughts on digital citizenship. But now, let's switch gears a little and talk about something a bit different. His love of barbecue.
I have to admit, when we first started talking about this part of Wesley, I was a bit confused. It seemed so different from everything else we've discussed. But as we've gone deeper, I'm starting to see how it all fits together.
It might seem unexpected, but Wesley is all about living a multifaceted life. He doesn't limit himself to just one thing. And his barbecue journey is a great example of that.
So tell me, what's this barbecue side of Wesley like?
Well, it's more than just grilling in the backyard. He's really documented his barbecue experiments all over social media. TikTok videos of sizzling brisket, Instagram photos of those perfectly smoked ribs, Facebook groups where he talks about all things barbecue.
It's clearly more than just a hobby for him. He's put a lot of time and energy into it, and he's sharing that knowledge with others.
And remember, that blog we mentioned earlier, Cook with Wes, is like a barbecue Bible. You'll find detailed recipes, step-by-step instructions, even tips for when things go wrong on the grill. He doesn't just tell you how to cook, he explains the why behind it.
That teacher instinct coming through again, even with barbecue.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the similarities between barbecuing and everything else we've discussed about Wesley's professional life. They both need patience, attention to detail, a willingness to experiment, and that drive to keep improving.
You're right. It doesn't matter if he's developing a coding lesson, working on a media literacy unit, or perfecting a brisket recipe. There's that same approach. Focus on the process, try new things, and share what you've learned.
And that sense of community that he builds around everything he does, just like he encourages collaboration in his classrooms and online, he's created a space for people who love barbecue to connect and learn from each other.
It's a great reminder that learning can happen anywhere.
So what can we take away from Wesley's passion for barbecue?
I think it shows us how he approaches life. It tells us that we don't have to keep our interests separate. Our passions can influence each other in ways we might not expect.
It's a challenge for all of us to explore those hidden passions. What interests do we have that we can connect in new and interesting ways?
Wesley's story reminds us that it's okay to be multifaceted, to keep learning throughout our lives, and to find those connections in unexpected places.
This deep dive into Wesley's world has been fascinating. He's challenged us to think differently about career paths, education, and even the role of barbecue in a well-rounded life.
He's shown us what it means to embrace our different interests, keep learning, and build communities around things we're passionate about.
And as we wrap up, we want to leave you with this thought. What will your story be? What unique mix of passions and experiences will you bring to the world?
Think about it, explore it, and most importantly, share it. Your story matters. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Wesley Fryer.